In this vial is a strain of a deadly disease that has plagued the population of the earth for centuries, and this is the salvation of humanity, a vaccine that has saved millions of people. This vaccine against plague and also against cholera was created by our compatriot, a scientist from Odessa. But who knows about him today? We will rectify not only this oversight.
We give the names of outstanding individuals to cities and avenues, laws and formulas, theorems, and even stars. At first glance, it may seem that the list of Ukrainian geniuses is shorter than in other countries, but it's only the initial impression. Since Ukraine didn't have its statehood for a long time, most Ukrainian talents made history under the flags of other countries. If we are familiar with any of them, they are typically foreigners. And many of us don't even suspect that they are our fellow countrymen, people born and raised in Ukraine. For many centuries, talented Ukrainians not only created their history, but also influenced global events. The unjustly forgotten geniuses of our country are the heroes of today's program.
Watch this!
As one of the world's first female surgeons, she was a revolutionary, and at the same time, she was a friend of the royal family she treated. She was a poet of the Silver Age and a prose writer. The fate of Vera Gedroits remains a mystery to this day. She was born in 1870 and came from an ancient Lithuanian noble family. Its representatives had long fought against imperial rule. Vera's grandfather was executed for participating in the Polish uprising. The girl inherited the rebellious nature of her relatives. For writing epigrams about her teachers, she was expelled from school at the age of 13. Vera's desire to become a doctor arose after a series of deaths of close relatives, especially her beloved brother Sergei. She went to St. Petersburg and enrolled in medical courses. At that time, Gedroits began composing her first poems and joined revolutionary circles, writing proclamations and participating in demonstrations. After one of these, she was arrested and exiled to her father's estate under police supervision. Nevertheless, the girl excelled in her studies and wanted to continue her higher education, but it was unavailable to women in the Russian Empire. Vera went to study in Switzerland, where she entered into a fictitious marriage to obtain a travel passport. Only 3 women were studying at the medical faculty of the University of Lausanne. Gedroits completed her studies with honors. Her teacher was the famous professor Cesar Roux. He recognized her as a promising and intelligent student who could become the head of the department after his retirement. Everyone predicted the young doctor a brilliant European career and practice, but ambitious plans were disrupted. Her sister died, and her mother became seriously ill. Vera had no choice but to return to Russia. Poverty and hard work awaited her in a poorly equipped hospital at a local factory. But in a short time, Gedroits turned the factory hospital into an exemplary medical institution. The treatment methods of the country's first female surgeon became effective. The rumor word about the new talented doctor quickly spread, and people reached out for Gedroits. She became even more famous after she performed a complex operation. A person with a severe illness who could neither stand nor lay down was back on their feet. Vera was invited to participate in a congress of surgeons in the country, where distinguished colleagues gave her a standing ovation. It was her moment of triumph. When the Russo-Japanese War began, Gedroits went to the front as a surgeon on a medical train. There, she left her mark on the history of medicine. She was the first to perform abdominal surgeries not in hospital operating rooms, but directly on the battlefields. This was a breakthrough, as most soldiers wounded in the abdomen were simply left without any help before. It took other European countries a whole decade to master the technique of abdominal surgery, while Vera developed and performed it independently under difficult frontline conditions.
Watch this!
In just the first week, Gedroits performed more than 60 complex surgeries. Among her patients were the Russian general Gurko and the captured Japanese prince. The latter called her the Princess of Mercy. For that time, Vera offered a sensational hypothesis: the closer a hospital is to theater of military operations, the more effective its activities. During the 1905 revolution, the princess immersed herself in politics again, and even became a member of the Cadet Party. Her reputation was pretty peculiar, as she showed herself as a revolutionary, a heroine, and a top-notch doctor at the same time. The police watched but did not pursue her. Vera continued to operate on hundreds of patients, work on her dissertation, and write poems, stories, and fairy tales for children. By the way, she always signed her literary works with the name Sergei G, in memory of her late brother. In 1909, Empress Alexandra invited Gedroits to work at the hospital at the Royal Palace in Tsarskoye Selo. Now she became the personal physician of the imperial family and treated their children. Initially, Vera shocked high society, where she unexpectedly found herself, although she had the right to be there by birth. The princess had a short haircut, wore men's clothing, constantly smoked, and addressed herself in the masculine gender. But her high professionalism and personal qualities outweighed all prejudices. Gedroits became a close member of the Romanov family. However, the princess was independent in her views and judgments. She openly told the Empress about the inevitability of revolution and once even kicked Georgy Rasputin out of the operating room. One of Gedroits' patients in Tsarskoye Selo was Nikolai Gumilov. Having cured him of malaria, she won the poet's amorous heart. Gumilov fell in love. After receiving a firm no from the princess, he dedicated a poem to her. Later, Vera provided financial support to Gumilov, and he in turn introduced her to all the famous figures of the Silver Age. Her poems were published in collections alongside the works of Akhmatova, Mandelstam, and Yesenin. During the First World War, Gedroits led a hospital in Tsarskoye Selo. Under her guidance, Alexandra Fedorovna and her daughters mastered the profession of Sisters of Mercy and assisted Vera in surgeries. After the 1917 revolution, she went to the front, was wounded, and was evacuated to Kyiv, where she spent the rest of her life. Initially, the attempts of the country's best surgeon to find work were unsuccessful. The noble stamp was more significant to the Soviet authorities than professionalism. Finally, she found a vacant position at a children's polyclinic. The Bolsheviks arrested Gedroits several times, but each time released her after a telegram from a high-ranking official from Moscow, to whom she had once performed a complex operation. In Kyiv, Vera became close to Countess Maria Neret. They began living together as spouses. Princess Gedroits was never interested in men. Even Gumilov called her our Sappho. Several prominent Ukrainian scientists and doctors were arrested during Stalinist repressions in the late 1920s. Vera was dismissed without the right to a pension. She bought a house in the suburbs of Kyiv, left medicine, and focused solely on literary activities. Vera Gedroits fell ill with cancer in 1931 and died the following year. Her name was forgotten for decades. It became known again and received well-deserved honors and recognition only in the late 20th century, thanks to the efforts of British physician John Bennett. The global medical community remembers and honors our doctor compatriot who made an invaluable contribution to its development. In 2021, Google marked the anniversary of her birth by featuring special doodle with her portrait.
Watch this.
The Maya civilization was one of the greatest in the Americas. They had a deep understanding of astronomy, managed to build beautiful cities with towering temples, and developed their mathematical and writing systems. However, for a long time, information about this ancient civilization was primarily derived from archaeological sources. Deciphering Maya writing posed a seemingly unsolvable challenge for historians and linguists. Maya script looked more like a comic without words than conventional text. It was a complex system of written signs that adorned the surfaces of temple walls, palace complexes, memorial stelae, and vessels. Many scholars have tried to decode this script since the early 19th century, but only one succeeded. Using the Rosetta Stone, Jean-François Champollion deciphered Egyptian hieroglyphs by comparing the same inscription in 3 languages. However, there was nothing to compare Maya text to. In 1995, a German researcher named Paul Schellhas wrote an article titled "The Decipherment of Maya Writing – An Unsolvable Problem." This article caught the attention of a university student named Yuri Knorozov. He saw the title as a challenge and exclaimed, "What has been created by one human mind cannot remain incomprehensible to another." Yuri Knorozov was born in 1922 in the Kharkiv region of Ukraine. While playing croquet with his brothers at the age of 5, he suffered a severe head injury that caused him a temporary blindness. He later believed that this incident unlocked his abilities. The Knorozov family valued education and upbringing greatly. At the time, Ivan Pavlov's theory that children's drawings reflected the evolution of the brain was popular. Therefore, his parents meticulously examined their children's drawings to understand which direction to develop their abilities. Young Yuri's drawings still amaze researchers. All of the Knorozov children became prominent specialists in various fields of science. Yuri possessed a phenomenal memory and could quote entire pages from the books he read. In 1939, he entered the history faculty of Kharkiv University, but managed to complete only 2 courses since the World War II began. Yuri was not taken to the front because of dystrophy and typhus. He dug trenches and later lived under occupation, hidden from being sent to Germany. After the liberation, he moved to Moscow and resumed his studies at the history faculty. The future scientist borrowed money to buy some food, as he spent all his scholarship on books. During his studies, he came across an article by a German researcher on Maya script and took it as a challenge.
Watch this!
After receiving his diploma, Knorozov moved to Leningrad and began working at the Museum of Ethnography. His next-door neighbor was Lev Gumilov, the son of famous poets. Knorozov was attached to his family and had warm and friendly relations with Lev's mother, Anna Akhmatova. In addition to working at the museum, Knorozov devoted most of his time to deciphering Maya script. Gradually, he came to the conclusion that each Maya symbol represented not an individual letter or a whole word, but rather a syllable. This insight was the key to unlocking their alphabet. The scientists developed a catalog that included Maya script, symbols, and their interpretations. Just imagine, he did all of this manually. It was a titanic effort. In March 1955, Yuri Knorozov defended his dissertation and presented his discovery, the decipherment of the Maya civilization's writing. After 4 hours of discussing his work, Knorozov was immediately awarded the title of Doctor of Sciences, bypassing the candidacy stage. It was a scientific sensation. News of this discovery quickly spread abroad. Initially, foreign colleagues approached the revelation with caution. They even labeled his method a Marxist diversion. Many scientists wondered how a young and unknown researcher who had never set foot on the American continent achieved in such a short time what others could not achieve for 4 centuries. However, Knorozov's method was gradually accepted by Maya scholars worldwide. The scientists adored cats, and they always lived in his house. The most famous among them was a blue-eyed Siamese cat named Asa. Knorozov is depicted holding her in his most famous photograph. When asked to provide a press photo, this was all he would send. Moreover, Knorozov named the cat a co-author of his scientific works. It is worth noting that the scientist was very irritated when journalists excluded his pet from press and publishers removed her name from his publications. After deciphering the Maya script, Knorozov worked on decoding other ancient languages, such as the script of Easter Island and ancient Indian symbols. He achieved significant success in these endeavors as well. Knorozov could not travel abroad for a long time while living in the Soviet Union. His first trip happened only in 1990 upon the invitation of the president of Guatemala. During this visit, he saw the ruins of ancient Maya cities for the first time. Later, he visited Mexico and the United States multiple times. In Mexico, he received the Order of the Aztec Eagle, reward for his exceptional contribution to the state. After Yuri Knorozov's passing, the University of Guatemala opened a department named after him. And the statue of a scientist holding his beloved cat was erected in Mexico.
Watch this.
Sonya Delaunay, the first woman to have a solo exhibition at the Louvre, and it all began in Odessa. In November 1885, a girl named Sarah was born into a Jewish family. She was raised by her uncle, a successful lawyer in St. Petersburg, who gave her an excellent education and a new name. This is how she became Sonya Turk. During school vacations, the family traveled across Europe, and Sonya visited major museums in France, Germany, and Italy. It was during these trips that her interest in art sparked. Sonya's artistic talent was recognized, and she went on to study at an art school in Karlsruhe. In 1905, she moved to the epicenter of the art world, Paris, where she spent significant time in art galleries. During that time, Sonya's works were influenced by well-known artists such as Van Gogh, Gauguin, and Henri Matisse. She initially married a German collector and art critic named Wilhelm Oed. However, after meeting in an art gallery Robert Delaunay, an abstract artist, she divorced Wilhelm and married Robert in 1909. This union was not just romantic, but also creative. They found their unique style. Sonya developed her ideas not only on canvas but also in practical areas. She designed clothing and footwear, theatrical costumes, fabrics, and carpets for French factories, illustrated books, dabbled in ceramics and stained glass, and even designed cars. Fashion became a distinct and vibrant aspect of Sonya's work. Sonya founded her own fashion house, Sonya Delaunay. Her house produced exclusive clothing, with clients including Hollywood star Gloria Swanson. In 1925, at the peak of her success, Sonya Delaunay appeared on the cover of British Vogue. She was celebrated as a leading figure in the Art Deco movement. She lived to 94 and became one of the first artists to merge art and fashion. Unfortunately, Ukraine doesn't possess a single work by this renowned avant-garde artist. However, Sonya Delaunay never forgot the land that gave her life. In her memoir, she wrote, "I love bright colors. These are the colors of my childhood, the colors of Ukraine."
Watch this.
History knows many successful spies, but today we want to pay special attention to our compatriot, who was born in the city of Lemberg, now the city of Lviv. The case of Polish Army cavalry captain Jerzy Sosnowski became the most sensational espionage scandal between the two world wars. He managed to obtain the greatest secrets and deceive three of the world's intelligence agencies. Born at the end of the 19th century, Jerzy Sosnowski graduated from a Lviv gymnasium, received universal military training and served in the Austro-Hungarian and later the Polish armies. During the war against the Bolsheviks in 1920, he was awarded the Cross of Valor 4 times. After the war, a brilliant officer who knew multiple languages started his work in military intelligence. In 1926, posing as a wealthy and noble Polish baron, Jerzy Sosnowski moved to Berlin. The elegant and charismatic man with aristocratic manners quickly became a part of Berlin's high society. He built his network of informants using a highly original method, known in all intelligence circles as the honey trap. Jerzy started recruiting agents who were not German officers, but their wives, mistresses, and secretaries. The handsome military officer led a luxurious life, hosting parties and receptions. Soon he achieved his first goal. Baroness Benita von Falkenhayn became his lover and agent. She worked as a secretary in the military department and was a distant relative of Erich von Falkenhayn, the chief of the German General Staff during World War I. Without her, Jerzy would hardly have achieved such significant success. Benita aimed to expand the network of agents and introduce Jerzy to new women. Jealousy was never an issue. It was all for the cause. Through Benita, Jerzy Sosnowski met Renata von Natzmer, who worked in the Ministry of War and held an important position in the inspection of the motorized troops. It was the authority where strategies for tank warfare were developed. Renata became Jerzy's most valuable agent. Becoming his lover and enjoying a luxurious lifestyle, she made copies of important documents. Her catch amounted to over 200 papers marked top secret. Thus, Jerzy Sosnowski possessed information about close military cooperation between Moscow and Berlin, including secret training grounds for German tank crews and aviators in the Soviet Union. However, his greatest success was the called Plan A. It was a complete outline of German forces and their subsequent military actions against Poland and France. Obtaining the full plan for the concentration of enemy forces was the cherished dream of any spy, but until then, no one had succeeded. The stolen documents held immense value.
Watch this!
Benita introduced Sosnowski to other women who provided valuable information for the handsome Jerzy. However, he wasn't stingy and generously rewarded his lovers with expensive gifts and bonuses for valuable information. For instance, Baroness von Falkenhayn received more than 125,000 marks. In just 7 years of work in Germany, Sosnowski spent over 1 million marks, becoming the highest paid spy. For more than 7 years, Sosnowski's operations went brilliantly. The most classified documents from the military authorities made their way to Warsaw. In the spring of 1932, a popular German newspaper, Berliner Tribune, published a sensation under the headline, "Who is Red Mr. Sosnowski?" The author was a rejected lover who had failed to establish a relationship with a playboy. The article claimed that Sosnowski was not who he claimed to be and mentioned Benita's name. However, the Weimar Republic police dismissed the publication as tabloid gossip. Jerzy, the handsome cavalry captain, continued his espionage activities for 2 more years. Things started to get tough when the Nazis came to power. His acquaintance with Hungarian dancer Leon Yako would prove fatal. In a field of jealousy, she exposed Sosnowski to the German authorities. At the end of February 1934, the Abwehr arrested the spy and the women working for him. The Ukrainian native shared both prison and lawyer with the leader of the German communists, Ernst Thälmann. Sosnowski was sentenced to life imprisonment, while Benita and Irena were sentenced to death for high treason and espionage. They became some of the last people in Germany to be beheaded by an axe. Jerzy witnessed their executions. After spending several years in a German prison, he was exchanged for 7 German agents. However, he was immediately arrested and tried for embezzlement and treason in Poland. When World War II started, prison guards hastily executed inmates. His wounds were not fatal and he managed to survive. He was then handed over to Soviet counterintelligence. After that, the trail of Jerzy Sosnowski disappears. According to one Polish general's testimony, the spy died in prison in 1942. According to other reports, he was released and perished during the liberation of Warsaw in 1944. The legendary head of Nazi Germany's intelligence, Wilhelm Canaris, inadvertently owed his career to our hero. Following Jerzy Sosnowski's disclosure, Konrad Pacyk, his predecessor, as head of the Abwehr, was dismissed.
Watch this!
Throughout history, some of the deadliest diseases on Earth were considered to be plague and cholera. In our time, while they have not disappeared from troubled regions, the death rate among those infected is relatively low. However, 2 centuries ago, entire villages and cities would perish during epidemics of plague, cholera, smallpox, the Spanish flu, and many other pandemics. For these diseases, the mortality rate rarely exceeded 30% among the afflicted. Contracting the plague meant certain death. People died within a few days. That's why the fear of cholera or plague was greater than the fear of any war. In the 6th century, the first pandemic of this dreadful disease devastated all Mediterranean countries, claiming the lives of around 100 million people. Byzantium lost half of its population during that time. In the 14th century, Europe saw 25 million victims of the plague. Many scientists worked tirelessly to find the cause and halt the tragedy. A man who created vaccines against the plague and cholera, thereby saving the world from a global catastrophe, was born in 1860 in Ukraine, in Odessa. His name was originally Marcus Havkin, but he later adopted simpler name Volodymyr. The famous Ilya Mechnikov was his teacher at Odessa University. As a Jew, Havkin was not allowed to conduct scientific research in Russia. He was offered the opportunity to convert to Orthodoxy, but declined and emigrated to the West. In 1892, Havkin created the world's first cholera vaccine, demonstrating its safety on himself. The British government sent him to Calcutta, where a cholera epidemic was raging. The doctor attempted to initiate mass vaccination. However, he faced resistance from traditional Hindu, who considered vaccinations dangerous. Havkin took an unconventional approach by enlisting the moral authority of Mahatma Gandhi, a progressive thinker. Gandhi asked to vaccinate it, and ordinary people flocked to the white healer. Within a few years, cholera incidence and mortality rates dropped dramatically. Havkin's improved vaccine is still in use today. Towards the end of the 19th century, a third cholera pandemic began in Asia, especially ravaging India. Over 6 million people lost their lives. Once again, Havkin arrived in India and swiftly created the world's first effective anti-plague vaccine. He tested it on himself first.
Watch this!
For saving millions of lives, Queen Victoria awarded Havkin one of the highest orders of the British Empire. Leading European doctors and biologists attended London reception to honor our fellow countrymen. Later, the scientists supervised vaccinations for English soldiers sent to the First World War. There are dark spots in his biography. There is no information about his life during the First World War and several years after. And this happened to be the time when the first chemical weapons were developed, which might have involved our hero. At the end of the war, Germany used chemical warfare agents on the battlefield for the first time in history. And the Allied countries did everything to respond to this challenge. Havkin was on a first-name basis with the disease agents and had previously closely collaborated with the Ministry of Defense of Great Britain. Biographers are still debating the scientist's contribution to the chemical weapons development. After retiring from scientific work, Vladimir Havkin began to advocate for the rights of Jews. Thanks to his scientific discoveries, he became a wealthy man, but he led a very modest life. He spent all his means on philanthropic purposes. Throughout his life, the scientist anonymously helped various public organizations and those in need. Despite his outstanding discoveries in medicine and microbiology, Havkin's name is rarely heard in scientific circles and is almost absent from the global scientific literature. But the memory of our outstanding compatriot is honored in India, where he saved many lives. Mumbai Research Center has been bearing this name for over 100 years, and they continue to study human immunity. Havkin bequeathed all his money to create a fund to support young scientific talents, which still exists to this day. For creating the vaccine, he was recognized as a national hero of India and is still hailed as the White Healer. But Havkin saved not only India, but also people worldwide.
Watch this!
Today, you have learned the stories of our 4 famous compatriots. They all represented a unique combination of cultures, nationalities, eras, and achievements. Through their activities and discoveries, they contributed to the creation of the modern multicultural world. Undoubtedly, within the framework of a single episode, it is impossible to cover a significant portion of the famous Ukrainians who have made an invaluable contribution to the development of civilization. Therefore, we have new programs and new stories for you. To be continued.